Justice is not a performance. It is not about dominance, and it is not about being seen. It is a line, a boundary that separates order from chaos, and it must be held, no matter the cost. I have spent years watching what happens when that line is crossed. When people decide that their power gives them the right to define justice for themselves, it always begins with certainty, with the belief that they are necessary, that their actions are justified, that the world is better because of them. And it always ends the same way, with destruction, with lives reduced to collateral, with a system that no longer protects the innocent but exploits them. Justice requires restraint. It requires discipline. It requires limits, especially for those who believe they do not need them.
Sounds very noble, very serious, but also very limited. You talk about justice like it is some fixed thing, some sacred boundary that must never be crossed. But boundaries are for people who lack power. You impose rules on yourself because you need them, because without them you would lose control. I do not have that problem. Justice, real justice, is not about restraint. It is about results. It is about eliminating threats, ensuring safety, making sure that people live without fear. And if that requires force, real force, then so be it. People do not care how justice is delivered. They care that it works. They want to feel safe when they walk outside. They want to believe that someone stronger is protecting them. That is what I provide. Not your version of justice. Controlled, limited, hesitant. Mine is absolute.
Absolute justice does not exist. The moment you claim it does, you have already lost sight of what justice means. You reduce it to outcome, to efficiency, to whatever produces the result you want. But justice is not just about outcomes. It is about process, about accountability, about ensuring that power is not abused. You say people want safety, and you're right. But safety built on fear is not safety. It is submission. When people rely on someone who answers to no one, who operates without limits, they are not protected. They are controlled. You may remove threats, but you also remove the system that defines what a threat is. And once that system is gone, justice becomes whatever you decide it is.
And what is wrong with that exactly? You act like systems are perfect, like they do not fail, like they do not let people suffer every single day. I have seen those systems. Slow, weak, full of compromises. Criminals walk free, people get hurt, and everyone just accepts it because it follows the rules. Your version of justice protects the idea of fairness, but it does not always protect people. Mine does. When I act, the threat is gone. No trials. No delays, no second chances for people who do not deserve them. It is clean, it is efficient, and most importantly, it works. You call it control, I call it certainty.
Certainty without accountability is dangerous. You assume that your judgment is always correct, that your decisions are always justified, but no one is immune to error, not even you. Justice requires a system. Precisely because individuals are flawed. It creates checks, balances, a structure that prevents any one person from becoming the sole authority. You see those safeguards as weakness. I see them as necessary. Because the moment one person becomes judge, jury, and executioner, justice stops being about right and wrong and becomes about power. And power without limits does not stay just for long.
You keep coming back to limits like they are some kind of virtue. Limits are restrictions, chains that hold you back from doing what needs to be done. You are afraid of what happens without them. I am not. I know exactly what happens. Things get done, problems disappear. People live their lives without constantly worrying about who might hurt them. You talk about accountability. But accountability to who? To systems that cannot act fast enough, to people who argue while others suffer. I do not need permission to act, and that is why I am effective. That is why I am necessary.
Necessary is the word everyone uses before they cross the line. They convince themselves that their actions are justified because they produce results, because they solve problems, but they ignore the cost, the long-term consequences, the damage done to the very idea of justice. When people see that power alone determines what is right, they stop believing in fairness, in law, in order. They begin to see the world as something to be dominated, not understood. And that creates more chaos, not less. You may eliminate threats in the moment, but you create a world where new threats are inevitable, because the foundation is broken.
Or maybe I create a world where threats are too afraid to exist. You think criminals, terrorists, anyone who wants to cause harm, you think they are motivated by philosophy. They are not. They are motivated by opportunity. Remove the opportunity, remove the possibility of success, and they disappear. Fear is a powerful deterrent. People behave when they know the consequences are absolute. That is something your system struggles with. Too many chances, too many loopholes. You give people room to act and they take it. I take that room away.
Fear may deter, but it does not reform. It does not address the reasons people act the way they do. It does not build a society where justice is understood and respected. It builds one where justice is imposed, and imposed justice does not last. It requires constant enforcement, constant vigilance, constant escalation. You become the center of everything, the one holding it all together. And what happens when you are gone, when something changes, when your control weakens? The system collapses because it was never built to stand on its own.
You assume I need it to stand without me. I do not. I am the system. That is the difference between us. You rely on structures, on rules, on cooperation. I rely on power. And power, real power, does not need support to exist. It enforces itself. People adapt to it. They build their lives around it. They accept it as reality. You worry about what happens without you. I make sure that question never becomes relevant.
That is not justice. That is domination. You replace one form of chaos with another, one where the outcome depends entirely on you. Justice is supposed to exist beyond individuals, beyond power. It is supposed to be something people can rely on, something that protects them not just from criminals, but from those who claim to protect them. You remove that protection, you place yourself above it. And once someone stands above justice, they are no longer serving it.
Serving justice. You make it sound like a duty, like something you answer to. I do not answer to anything. That is why I am effective. That is why I am feared. And fear, whether you like it or not, keeps people safe. They do not question it. They do not challenge it. They accept it. You keep trying to turn justice into something philosophical, something ideal. But out there in the real world, people want results. They want to know that when something goes wrong, someone will fix it immediately. Not eventually, not after a process. Immediately.
And when that someone makes a mistake, when that immediate action harms the wrong person, when your certainty proves false, what then? Who holds you accountable? Who ensures that justice is corrected? That balance is restored. Without accountability, mistakes are not corrected. They are ignored, justified, repeated. That is the danger of your approach. It assumes perfection where none exists. It replaces a flawed system with a flawed individual and calls it progress.
Mistakes happen in every system. The difference is that mine does not pretend to be perfect. It simply moves forward. You get stuck in analysis, in hesitation, in second guessing. I act, and action matters. People remember who saved them, who protected them, not who followed the correct procedure. You focus on what could go wrong. I focus on what needs to be done. That is why people look up to me, why they trust me to handle things that others cannot.
Trust built on fear and spectacle is not real trust. It is dependency. People rely on you because they believe they have no alternative, not because they believe in your judgment. Real trust is built through consistency, through fairness, through actions that align with principles, not just outcomes. It takes time. It requires discipline, but it creates something stable, something that does not collapse under pressure. Justice is not about being the strongest. It is about being the most reliable, the most consistent, the most accountable.
Consistency is predictable, and predictability can be exploited. You limit yourself with rules, with lines you refuse to cross. That makes you easier to understand, easier to anticipate. I have no such limitations. I can do whatever is necessary, whenever it is necessary. That is real power. That is what makes justice effective. Not rules, not systems, not ideals. Power.
Without limits, there is nothing to guide your actions, nothing to anchor your decisions. You become reactive, driven by impulse, by perception, by whatever you believe is necessary in the moment. That is not justice. That is unpredictability. And unpredictability, no matter how powerful, is dangerous.
Dangerous to who? To those who would challenge me, yes. And that is the point. Justice should be dangerous to those who threaten order. It should be something they fear, something they cannot escape. You want justice to be fair. I want it to be effective. And if effectiveness requires fear, requires power, requires absolute control, then that is what justice becomes.
Justice is not something that becomes whatever is convenient. It is something that must be protected, even from those who believe they are serving it, especially from them. Because the greatest threat to justice is not chaos. It is the belief that one person has the right to define it for everyone else.